Welcome back to the Across the 616 podcast. Thanks once again for tuning in. Today is the fourth and final part of our first episode Mega Primer on how to attack the Rise of Red Skull campaign with each hero and its least used aspect combination. If you haven't already listened to parts 1, 2, and 3, I'd highly recommend doing so before going ahead and listening to today's installments. Links for those parts can be found in the description below. Also, as always, deck lists for the decks we speak about today can be found in the description below. So Spider-Man Aggression, immediately the addition of toe-to-toe to the pool through the Hulk hero pack stands out as being specifically very, very good with Spider-Man, being able to deal 5 and then either defend using 3 defense, but drawing the card off the activation as well. And obviously there's quite a nice pool of Avengers allies now in Aggression.
Absolutely.
Take us through your thought process for how to build this specific to Red Skull.
Well, for just to make sure everyone's clear again, because some people might look at this deck and be like, you got a lot of Avengers in there. Why weren't you doing Earth's Mightiest Heroes? I was building these in sequence of 4. And so I was using a single card pool because that's practical, and trying to build realistic decks if you were building them with someone else. So just keeping that in mind, because that's the one thing people sometimes forget, especially because so much of this stuff has been moved to people playing online, with other people's collections. But in the average scenario, you're going to have to make those sacrifices where someone gets those cards. So that's why sometimes, with the basic cards, in particular with that Earth's Mightiest Heroes, why, either only one person was getting those on a cycle of 4. So that's why he doesn't have them. So cool your jets if you're jumping on me about it.
Yeah, I got to admit, I'm very quick to, in that situation, I'm very, very quick to load the images files onto a USB drive and take it to my local office works and print the proxies. I guess it helps. I'm playing with myself usually, so
sure, but
there's no one to have a go at me about it.
It helps me, develop new strategies, dip into other things, try things that I didn't know were there. In particular, if I'm working with 2 decks from the same aspect that are coming in from the same collection. But yeah, on that one specifically, it would actually be a pretty good card with how this one was starting to line out, because there was quite a bit of Avengers in there. This was very ally heavy. Obviously, you see that, and the one thing that I noticed early, and I don't know if I was building like this for Spider-Man, with all the time, but it's going to be something I'm paying more attention to in the future, is 50% of your deck should probably be mental symbols. And the main reason why is because when you play Black Cat, you discard 2 cards, and if it's got a printed mental symbol, then you throw it into your hand. So being able to pull, on average, a card from that and not just have waste is beautiful. And a lot of scenarios, if it's 50% plus mental symbols, then she just gets paid for, whatever you paid for her with, right? Then you just discard it and throw them into your hand. And because it's going to take her a few turns to really pay off, because Black Cat, the amazing thing about Black Cat is she doesn't take consequential damage on her attack.
Am I the only one that thinks that was a typo? Like, I feel, No,
I don't think it was a typo. I'm almost positive it wouldn't have been a typo.
I wonder what their reasoning was for making it, in terms of the flavor reasoning behind them having her not take that.
Just her being a dinker and dunker. I imagine, because the thing of Beat Cop, right? So that's probably a good example to where it probably was intentional, because Beat Cop sits out there and just poop, just takes a threat off every single turn. That's basically what she's doing, except she's attacking. She's still susceptible to retaliate, right? It can concussive blasts and all that kind of stuff. So no, it definitely wasn't a typo. I'm 99% positive it wasn't a typo. And if it was, they probably looked at it and said, wow, this might be better.
It'll be interesting to see if we get more characters like that without the consequential damage on one of their basic stats going forward as well.
So how in Aggression has Enraged, where it's add one extra inconsequential damage, but add to the attack. I wouldn't be surprised if in Justice you saw like the reverse, except it took one thwart away from them, like, extra sneaky, and it took the consequential damage away. So you could have a person that started with 2, that you drop them down to 1, but you took away that consequential damage. So you basically turn an ally into a beat cop sort of thing, but they're just not, soaking up the tokens, right? And they have that versatility to still attack if they need to, or be able to defend a hit. But I'm getting off. I apologize. So
consequential damage is an interesting design space anyway going forward.
Correct. It pretty much has to be there, and it makes sense it's there. But so Spider-Man's biggest weakness, right, is he does not do well with minion swarms. He's another one of these guys. So it actually makes sense for you to try to build an aggression deck because he can swing out there. But he's not the best thwarter either. But aggression does have decent thwarting capability if minions are around. So I made sure I had chase them downs there, put the melees in there so I could fan the damage out. And if I'm flooding with a bunch of allies, right, Brawn is attacking and thwarting every single turn. Sentry, if you're using Sentry, you're probably thwarting with him. You're not attacking with him, even though he has 3 attack. That 2 thwart's huge. What does he have? 5 hit points? Yeah, 5 hit points. That's 10 thwart. Aggression ally, you've got to deal with a card that comes out, but Spider-Man's one of the best people to deal with extra cards getting thrown at him.
Enhanced Spider Sense, is it that cancels the treachery?
Correct. Enhanced Spider Sense cancels the when revealed effects on a treachery, so it's not quite as good as Doctor Strange's, which just cancels the whole thing outright. Again, it's like, that's why people tease Doctor Strange, because it's like you look at all his cards and then it's like a slightly better version of somebody else's, but it's still fantastic. It's still phenomenal. Don't get me wrong. And then of course backflip. And Spider-Man also draws a card every time he gets attacked, so he can load up on those things, and that's another good reason to do toe to toe with him. If whether I've got a chump blocker out to take it, or I've got a backflip in my hand already, or any of these things.
3 defense.
Say again.
3 defense as well.
Oh yeah, and 3 defense. So on your turn, right? That's his best stat. So I got 1 thwart, 2 attack, 3 defense. So it's not a bad idea to just go toe to toe with the villain, draw an extra card, defend against it, and do the 5 damage to the villain. So Cap and Spider-Man are probably the 2 biggest targets for toe-to-toe, even though I think a lot of folks would want to put it in those high hit point heroes. But even though Spider-Man's on the low side, Cap's on the average side, they're the ones who utilize it better than anybody else, because they both have 0 drop, dump the damage cards. They both have stuns, or pseudo stun, I guess you could say, with Spider-Man. You're generally not going to use Webbed Up too much in solo. In 3-player games, Webbed Up's one of the best cards in existence, and always will be, because you can pretty much stun a villain throughout the entire activation phase. But yeah, so I think if you're building Spider-Man aggression at this point, toe-to-toe is an essential card, because he just turns his defense into the stat of his choice and blasts somebody. And same thing with, like, if you have wiener minions somewhere and they're the better target for it, right? You can toe-to-toe on them and then chase them down and get that extra thwarting from being offensive. Combat training's nice because it helps pay for those attack events, and you've got the swinging web kicks, which are huge attacks. It's really easy for him just to kind of go all balls to the wall for a while. So even if you take a big blow from toe to toe, if worst case scenario it goes wrong, you take a bunch of damage. Aunt May heals 4 plus you recover for 3, right? So, and normally if you're flipping down, you don't even need to recover, because Aunt May's just going to heal 8 over those 2 turns. So I didn't even put like an endurance or anything like that in there. Let's see, Spider-Man, I took thwart again for him. That seems to be a pretty big thing for a solo campaign. Take thwart. Not only are you shoring up your weakness, but you're really able to capitalize on the enhanced side of that when every time you clear those side schemes, you're drawing an extra card. And if he's got two thwart on him personally, that's a lot of those side schemes are just getting cleared on the one activation.
Well, it really
So
does seem like the default choice, if unless your character or your game plan specifically. I think if in a vacuum, you're taking thwart most of the time.
yeah, solo definitely.
Like regardless of character, I mean.
Well, if you're playing multiplayer, you got to spread it around, so not everyone can take the thwart.
Yeah, solo wise, I feel like there's a few characters that want other stuff, but I think thwart is generally the one you're taking in more often than not. It's the best value on raid.
Correct. Yeah, well, it's you definitely get the most I guess effect on when you actually get that bonus side, right? Because you have the side schemes out there to clear every single round. So if you maybe don't have a minion out there every round, you're not going to recover every single time. You might not defend every single. You know what I'm saying? So it's the one that you're going to be able to get that extra card every single time. So just on that alone, just taking that into Red Skull is a huge boon. Spider-Man aggression, I was 9-1. I definitely cleaned up on it. So it and that's the other thing where I was like, could I have made this better? But I just didn't have I wasn't having losses, and the only time I was really adjusting was on those losses. So if someone's saying I can't believe you didn't see this, well, yeah, I didn't have a loss, so I wasn't worried about it.
The with toe-to-toe and swinging web kick, it's not out of the question to be able to basically end games pretty much get to a point where you can end games out of nowhere. To me, aggression feels a lot like it should be one of Spider-Man's better aspects. Where would you put it in the pantheon of aspect combinations with Spider-Man?
Solo?
Solo and multiplayer, let us know.
So the one issue that Spider-Man has is even though he's kind of known as a solo act and that he, stops all these, villains from doing all this stuff. I mean, he's, comic book wise, I don't think anyone's rogue gallery touches his, right? I think he's got the best of the best. Some people put Batman's up against his, and I think Batman has a couple of real iconic guys, but I think, if you really start going with the depth, some of Spider-Man's top villains take on, not just Spider-Man, but like Norman Osborn's kind of turned into one of the bigger threats in all the Marvel universe, right? So they, his stuff is more just widespread, but so he's got this great history there. He doesn't have good inherent thwart though to be able to do that, and that's where you do struggle a little bit with Spider-Man. Sentry really helps. Sometimes you'll want to build kind of a lower curve aggression deck, so Sentry might not make the cut, and that might make some people's brain melt because how efficient you claim he is. But if I'm trying to play those 2 cards a turn minimum, because that's the way the deck really functions, is consistently getting out 2 or 3 cards played every single turn. Yeah, and Sentry derails that, then yeah, you're not going to play him. But here, Spider-Man can go for the big booms and can afford to play a big drop because he's going to make up for those cards when he's getting attacked on the villain phase anyways, and be able to stack his hand that way. But man, and sorry it's taking me a while to answer this question, but I think just his thwarting issues do make aggression sometimes rough on him. So I'm not going to say it's his best aspect. I think he does do better in justice and leadership, where he can really shore up that hole, as well as, just having allies out there generally solves the swarm problems anyways. And um, so, but aggression is not far off. You have to make sure you have some chase them downs in there. Like I said, Sentry I think is clutch. And moving forward, with just any basic ally that has some decent thwart would probably be a big consideration for Spider-Man to add into the pantheon that he's using when he's trying to not worry about the scheme flipping over so flippantly.
Awesome. Yeah. The Spider-Man list looks very, very good, and definitely love to hear from any of the listeners if they do find some improvements for their builds. Like, if it'd be really good to get people to hit us up on the email 616mcpodcast@gmail.com. Just let us know whether they made any changes to the Spider-Man deck, and if there is anything that we've kind of missed with that build.
As you said, I noticed I don't even have a helicarrier in there. I had 2 martial prowesses, so that's the one I could tell you that, like, oh well, if I really was paying attention, I probably would have gone 1 and 1, just because they can then both be out at the same time if you can get them both out. I mean, they fill semi the same function. The helicarrier is actually more broad, so that's a little odd. But like I said, that's just some of those fine tunes that I didn't then re-go over and go, oh, whoops, I made that mistake. So yeah, I think there's probably a couple mistakes in here. I just found one.
Helicarrier. I know you mentioned that you tend to build with a single card pool. Quinn Carrier is another idea there, because I think Quinn Carrier, off the top of my head, has the mental resource, which means you can
correct.
have Black Cat retrieve it.
Yep.
Look what the cat dragged in. It's a floating aircraft carrier.
Yeah, there's no reason helicarrier wasn't in there, because I have 5 copies, right? Everyone was using all of. So
yeah, I think at the moment is there any Quinn Carrier we've only got 1 copy of, or 2 copies of?
1 copy. There's another one on the way.
Nice.
It's in Wasp's deck, so you're gonna have 2, but you don't have 1 out on a table at the same time as well. So make sure you keep that in mind in multiplayer. You can only have 1 out on the table. Nice thing is that if you're playing Kang, everyone gets split up, and so everyone can play theirs if they do have it in there. But that's one reason I would even favor helicarrier over Quinn Carrier in a lot of situations, because then at least I'm not competing for that space. Unless I really need that wild resource, or like I said, like you said, Spider-Man does combo well with it because of Black Cat. So it's a good card to get in there.
Yeah, definitely. And just touching back on that earlier point before we move on to Spider-Woman, if you're wondering about my storage box, I do actually have a lot of sleeved copies of proxies of varying degrees, featuring like your endurances, extra honorary Avengers, extra Queen Carriers. So anytime I get one of those reprints, we only have 1 or only 3 of them, kind of a little bit pumping the fist as well, because I get to replace a really, really poorly made proxy with legitimate content. So that's always a small win.
Hopefully it's not a misprint like some of the ones in Rise of Red Skull. It's like, yeah, I got a second Avengers tower, but it's not.
It's just a tower. It's just a tower. No Avengers.
Apparently it's for sale.
So moving on to Spider-Woman in Leadership and Justice, I believe we've got it down as.
And I didn't kick this one over to you because I wasn't quite done with it. So
adding to that though is the fact that,
I'm done with it now. I did play it.
Adding to that is the fact that, and this is the second confession I'm going to make, is that I actually haven't done anything with Spider-Woman yet. I've just kind of been too busy putting together different builds in the existing characters in specific aspect combinations that interest me, and I've kind of been sitting on it, hoping to develop a bit better understanding of deck building before really trying to attack Spider Woman. I'm aware that there's a couple of different build theories regarding Spider Woman, one of which is going really cheap cost stuff and trying to buffer up and play her reasonably aggressive. And the second is more just trying to find synergy between the two selected aspects. So yeah, let us know now how you went with that. Were you conscious of building it one way or the other, or were you really just trying to get the best of both two worlds?
I think it's almost foolhardy not to go with the first one you mentioned, because you just can't get the like the power ofs right. You're not really going to be able to throw in that and get the discounts on all your cards. So there's also ways, and I mentioned Quinjet earlier, where the big thing that Spider Woman has in her kit is Captain Marvel, where when she uses a basic power, right, you got to draw a card. She's going to do that 3 times if you don't heal her or defend with her. Well, with a Quinjet, that only costs 1, effective resource cost of 2. I can let those counters build up. I get the buff that turn for doing a 2-drop, right? Or I guess a 1-drop with it, but yeah, effective resource cost 2. Get her +1 to thwart, +1 to attack, +1 defense that turn, and then later I'm dropping Ms. Marvel in for free. So effective resource cost of 3 total with the Quinjet to get some any Avengers ally in, versus an effective resource cost of 5, and it was spread between 2 turns, so my whole turn wasn't shot, right, trying to get Captain Marvel in. So just having that sort of angle that you can use and bring her in, and because this also had your real pricey Spider-Man in there. Why have those Quinjets sitting there and building up those counters? They're going to have 5 on there, so I was cheating Spider-Man in. So no surprise, went 10-0 with this, and we're just cranking through stuff. Goliath was another choice I used. Doing the whole Goliath madness and everything. I'm wondering if I put this deck in right. I thought I had Earth's. I'm looking at my thing. I don't have Earth's Mightiest Heroes here. I might need to go look back because I'm pretty positive. Oh, there they are. There they are. They were in a funny spot. So yeah, I had Earth's Mightiest Heroes teamed up here to get either her more actions or Captain Marvel more actions, give me more cards, or Goliath more actions, or whoever I needed to get more actions. Anytime you're using a teamwork, it's real easy to work Wonder Man in there, because you have to discard a card to get him to attack anyways. He has an attack of 3. Being able to team that up with a Spider Woman that's also at a minimum, right? Teamwork acts as a morale boost. So for a 0-cost card to get thrown out to attack with a teamwork, I'm smacking someone for 5 with Wonder Man. And then if I don't have those teamworks coming up, I'm probably thwarting with them at that stage, getting use out of him. See, again, you're going to get the under surveillance in there, get a skilled investigator out. I chose to do followeds to get get that supplemental damage on there, because that's one thing that Spider-Woman does suffer from, is she kind of has low base damage in her kit. She's got huge versatility, which often makes up for it, because all I got to do is play a couple aspect cards, and then she's immediately shooting back up to a very respectful stat line of 3/3/3. But just trying to get those activations. I went with cheap, and I was because of those Quinjets. You get a trio of Quinjets where you're dropping a Quinjet every other turn. When Captain Marvel shows up, Goliath shows up, Spider-Man shows up, they're all just coming in for free, essentially. So you get it's kind of a train going there, and Pheromones helps you flip back to alter ego mode and load up on a great next turn, because you can use her apartment to find, something that you really want, something that you can really use. The self-propelled glides, of course, get you multiple activations. If you've been buffing the stats that turn, Burst Mighty's Heroes work with that as well. I mean, she's got everything going for it, and as well as the containment or contaminant immunity, where she's healing and she's getting the tough tokens. She's not quite to that busted broken level of like, wow, they made a mistake with her, but she's right at that level of like, wow, that's about as powerful as you can make somebody without breaking them. They did a real good job with the kit. I was concerned about it at first. I thought maybe they went overboard a little bit, but no, they didn't.
To be honest, personally, I would prefer that they do err on the side of making heroes that are going to be interesting to play out of the box, but then continue to be able to evolve and become more interesting. I mean, I really see Spider-Woman in the same vein as Miss Marvel and Tony Stark, in terms of the fact that they're going to be very good, balanced heroes now. And I don't care if they kind of get busted to the moon, because they kind of make up for the feel bad of having an overpowered character by continually being interesting, and to be able to get more interesting over the game's entire lifespan.
But that's just the thing, right? The difference between all these other guys that kind of flirt the line and a Doctor Strange, which gets a lot of flack, is they can always adjust the scenarios to kind of battle these other guys, and attack it from that angle. And so as they're giving them better cards to make them better, you're also making the scenarios more difficult. So that, yeah, they can always be kept in line on that pretty easily. So they're most of these guys are really done in a really good spot. And I mentioned it last time, but Hulk and She-Hulk are not irredeemable. They're in a spot where all they need is some gamma card that says,
yeah, absolutely,
you're immune to stun. And then boom, I was like, whoa, really? I guess those guys are both now playable, because that was their biggest weakness. I don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, and I think that's unlike, say, Hawkeye, who is. I'd be surprised if they put it this way. I'd be surprised if they printed more Arrow cards, because I don't really know that there's too many other archers of note in the MCU. I can't think of.
You can always cheat stuff in. You have like a.
I'd be put it that way. I'd be surprised if they printed more arrows, or too many more arrows. Anyway, so.
Well, let's say you print like a card like Ice Javelin or something. So when you get a point where they make another status card that's like frozen, but they just make some special card where it's like a javelin with ice on it. I don't know. I'm reaching here. I understand, but you give the arrow trait on it, so it doesn't necessarily. You don't need to tap, because I think on Hawkeye's arrows it says to exhaust his bow to use the arrows, but on this card you wouldn't have to put that. Everyone can use it, but because of Hawkeye's great ability to use objects like that, he then still gets that same energy synergy himself when you put it in his deck. So you just give all they have to do is give him the arrow type, so they can still do that and expand these things. Like we're getting another preparation card, right? Coming in the next couple hero packs to synergize with Black Widow. But to keep it on subject, obviously Spider-Woman is the one that kind of gets the biggest benefit from the expanding pool, because she can dip into two aspects at the same time, and eventually
also
she's just going to have.
They're going to print low cost stuff. Like it's not a being costing 1 or 2 isn't a high bar to clear.
No,
as
they're about
opposed
to print
having to.
I was about to say they're about to print an ally that costs 1. That can go in there and keep that that effective resource cost of 2. That's a lot of times that's what you're going for. You just want to be able to get stuff that's either effective resource cost of 1, so basically cost 0, or effective resource cost of 2, so basically basically cost 1. and just keep those going. So then you can bump their stats up, and then finish it off with a self-propelled glide or an Earth's Mightiest Heroes or whatever you have in there to re-ready her. Indomitables are obviously great if you're using protection. So yeah, just keep her going, build her stats up, and get a couple of pops off of her. So it's everything essentially is a morale boost. Every single time she plays a different aspect, a new card. And I'm not. I mean, I'm torn about it. I know I went 10-0. I kind of still like aggression, protection better with her. Maybe that's just my style. It's a little bit more engaging, active. A lot of readying in that one, and that's I think why I like it with the Battle Furies and the Indomitables going in concert with each other. But this has got to be a close second. Maybe it's better. I don't know. A lot of people have said that this is her best combo. I would. It's up there. I'd probably rank it third myself. So,
what do you think her top three actually looks like?
Her top three?
Yeah, in terms of aspect combinations.
Aggression protection is number one. Aggression leadership is number two. You got to think of all the Avengers synergies you got going on there. Plus, you can kind of cheat enraged, right? You can put enraged on somebody. So with Wonder Man, right? Right there, that's a decent target. Throwing enraged on him, thwart with him a couple times when you don't have the teamwork showing up. But it's when those teamwork show up, boom, teamwork him in, and then you're swinging for 5 because you want to pitch a card for him anyway. So you find ways to kind of cheat with enrage and get more damage out of that. And with again, with like Giant Man coming, you can cheat him with a Quinjet, putting enraged on him. So he has are you kidding me? The dude's going to have a attack of 6 that I can teamwork and then smack for 8, by dropping a single card at that point, on a turn. That's huge. So, yeah, I think leadership aggression is going to be up there, and it's going to overtake aggression protection. And then I would go leadership justice. But obviously there's different angles you can take because where guys probably go nuts is they probably do this kind of cheese strategy of Agent Coulson grabs a rapid response, you play the rapid response, and you defend with Agent Coulson, and then he comes back in via the rapid response.
And that triggers his come into play ability, and he gets another rapid response. Yes,
and then he gets the rapid response back. Correct, and it goes back in your hand. Yeah. So that's probably the cheese that is their logic and thinking of why it's best. But I mean, I just wonder if I'm playing a different game than everybody else because I seem to have a lot more concussion blasts, like wipe my guys out in inopportune moments than other people do or something. You know what I'm saying? Like it's just not that uncommon for me to see those sorts of things. So, I mean, I imagine it does work quite a bit, but that's probably the cheese that they're going for. And I'd encourage a lot of people to try it, see how it goes. And maybe that does jump it up to the top. But, I kind of like being able to toe-to-toe someone into a desperate defense while I have an unflappable and electrostatic armor sitting on the table. So I'm like baiting him into my own block and getting lots of benefit out of it and then re-readying with the boosted stats to smack him again. But that's just, I just like doing stuff like that. Or it's maybe aggression protection for me is just the most clever of the batch. But
that's probably another reason why I've been slow to get onto building with Spider-Woman is just the fact that I've got 4 decks usually made at once and one of each aspect. And so it's probably, I'm now just some of the possibilities you've just mentioned there have got me kind of drooling over the future of like just being able to focus on Spider-Woman for a good week or two and just try her with everything and just it'll probably involve me dismantling other decks. So I might have to just put all the other heroes away and just focus on Spider-Woman. It definitely sounds like we could talk for another 2 or 3 hours regarding Spider-Woman's buildings possibilities, and that's probably
Sure.
another episode altogether. But just touching on, obviously, you mentioned that you were 10-0 with Spider-Woman. That stellar record aside, what do you feel her overall as a character, what strengths and weaknesses she kind of brings to while tackling the Rise of Red Skull campaign? Were there any areas where you did feel like your game plan was a little bit more vulnerable, or any areas where you thought it excelled?
Well, like I said, you gotta be aware of your damage output. That it's not the greatest, on the surface. So that's why I kind of went with the followeds, and was kind of directing it from there. The clear the area is obviously great, and you can get the extra cards and get extra benefit out of those things. The Wonder Man, that's a big reason why he got in there early, because you get those teamworks in there with Wonder Man, and that's pretty good value off a hit. And the reason why I went with this in the first place and didn't go with the Agent Coulson rapid response combo was to see if I couldn't Quinjet in some of these guys. And even though I didn't do the get readies and those sorts of things, honestly, a lot of times what Goliath was doing was just coming in, thwarting twice, and then blasting somebody for 5. So so he kind of got used in a little bit different capacity. And there's a good argument that I maybe could have swung one of the other Avengers in, but again, I mean, I had no reason to switch anything out because I did lose it all. But yeah, cheating with Quinjet, Spider-Man, Captain Marvel, Goliath was fantastic. That worked out real great because it was like a morale boost for any other character. With the caveat that 4 or 5 turns later, I was getting a big ally into play.
Yeah, it's really good to see that Quinjet has found a home here, because obviously the card is something that probably will get better as time goes on. But yeah, it's really good to see how
it just needed some of those higher cost Avengers allies to really be like, hello, you can play me for a lot cheaper with this card, because it's like Spider-Man goes from effective resource cost of 6 to effective resource cost of 3, again spread across 2 turns, which is better. So it's even though it's half, which is already good, splitting those big payments up over 2 turns is makes it even better. Yeah, if as long as you're stacking it to where it's just whoever comes up is who can use it, then it's always going to be useful.
So should we move on to Thor leadership?
Yes.
So yeah, Thor is another character who gets a bad rap, and apparently he's a little bit underpowered for most people's taste. I actually really like Thor. I think he's pretty cool, and I think that the minute if they ever get around to printing something that some more Asgard trait support, that he's going to ramp up in power very, very quickly.
I think he's more of a victim of the fact that this is a primarily multiplayer game that can be played solo. He's geared towards a multiplayer thing. Most of the scenarios, once you throw a second player in, it's a completely different ball game. I do not think Thor is as underpowered as is claimed. I think he's already kind of moved on up the ladder. But like I said, there's because of COVID, you get such a solo player bias right now on a game that functionally works better multiplayer, because they would not have made stun lock a thing. Like like all those facets of the game, which are great and I think work great, they're just a little cheesable on the solo side. And it's just, it is what it is, I guess. I know everyone hates that phrase, but that's it. It describes the situation. It is what it is. Scaling is not always going to work out with a core tenet of a game. So he does not have the cheesable strategies for solo, and he gets hurt because of his like card draws and things. And there's one strategy thing that we'll hit on here in a bit, that I think a lot of people miss, right? But yeah, I'm not on the train that Thor is one of the weakest characters. I'm not going to say he's, S tier God level, like he maybe should be because he's a god. But one, he's getting there, and two, as soon as you get a second player at the table, it's a completely different story. It's a completely different story.
So just some notes there for game designer, any game designers listening. A few quick notes. First of all, one, make sure that your game's set up to survive a global pandemic. If not, you just expect a lot of fan backlash. And point two is that javelins aren't arrows. So just that's another thing to keep in mind.
Oh, got it. Sorry.
Javelins aren't arrows. If you're building a superhero-based card game, make sure that you're getting your minor details of weaponry right. Otherwise, me personally and no one else will.
I know people can freak out. You're trying to make a synergy there, but those guys.
It's just me. It's just me. You can convince me that of all these other things that are going on, that a dude can lift a building and grow to 60 feet. But the minute you're trying to convince me that the javelins are close enough to arrows, that's the point where I'm walking out on you, sir. Anyway, sorry. Back on topic. Sorry.
No problem. So Thor is the reason why Spider-Man did not have those Earth's Mightiest Heroes. He's the culprit. I definitely leaned into his synergy.
Earth's Mightiest Heroes is an energy resource, isn't it?
Earth's Mightiest Heroes is an energy resource. So is Quinjet. So is Triskelion if I choose not to play it.
Yes.
So is Endurance he loves to have those extra hit points. In fact, so is Teamwork. Teamwork's energy. Lead from the front's energy.
Leadership's really good for energy resources.
And it's going to get even better. Stinger's going to be energy. Ronan's going to be energy. A lot of those. So this is just going to get better for him. Better and better. We can't stress enough, honestly, that by the end of this cycle, all of these guys that are looking for resources are going to be living fat and happy. Wasp is bringing the mental synergies, into the game a little bit stronger than they have been. So Thor, right off the bat, you're playing this campaign. He went 10-0 as well, with one caveat. I'll get into that in a second, and why I didn't necessarily count it on the 10-0. So technically 10-2, but so he went 10-0. He's got time to set up with some of these scenarios, and even without having those high thresholds, if he's able to get some of these, any of these cheaper allies into play early, it could buy him even more time, right? So if he gets, even just a one thwart guy out there, sometimes buy enough time to take another turn. What you do is you use the hammer as a resource. So I draw 5 cards, right? I then draw, I mulligan, do whatever I need to do. I then call the hammer. I have 6 cards in my hand. When I go to play my hand out, because I'm staying in alter ego mode for a turn, I use the hammer as a resource. And that way, next turn, I'm going to get 6 cards again. I have 6 resources. And then I can put the hammer down. Then I can play that hammer. That is the best kind of way to open up with Thor. That's the other reason why as soon as you put a second player into the game, Thor, his play style shifts, because I don't have the pressure to have to flip the first turn, right? I don't have oh crap, I need to get out there. That's just not there. He's another guy that I noticed I didn't have Maria Hill. Of course, I started with all Avengers, and that's kind of the angle I took. So Maria Hill probably could have gotten swung in here to help him out a little bit with the thwarting and the extra card that comes with her. But she doesn't Quinjet in, so I didn't put her in there first. I never had a reason to sub her in. When you hammer throw, and that hammer comes back to your hand, if you've got the board under control and you have the opportunity to swing down and maybe have a bigger hand, you can use the hammer as a resource, use Worthy to grab the hammer a second time and bring it back in your hand. So the hammer throw brought it in your hand the first time, you swing down, use this resource. Now you grab it, and you can actually do like depending on what aspect, just you don't have that many opportunities with leadership. I guess maybe an inspiring presence, right? That might have been one that you could have pulled off. used it, flipped down, pulled the hammer again, and then used it to play another card. And if you're thinking, well, that's a lot of cards. Well, yeah, I mean, with his Have at Thee in Asgard, I mean, you have times that you're going to have a lot of cards that are flown in your hand over there. So being able to use that extra resource and get two uses out of it, because after a hammer throw, by swinging down to Odinson and using the opportunity to, heal up or whatever. That's I think the strategy piece that a lot of people end up missing with Thor. And it's fair to say that it doesn't really work out that cleanly. But I mean, after I have the Gods of Thunder on the table, hammer throw is really easy to play with very little cost out of hand. So I still have most of my hand after a hammer throw, right? And might be able to pull off a second hammer throw. Shoot, and then get it in, and then pull off what I just said of going down. So, I think with the thing that people miss with Thor, don't just flip down when you have to, right? When you're desperate and you have to, do it when you can. That's when you should initiate some of these go down, everything from make the call to allies to Triskelion or a Quinjet or, whatever. These are all playable cards on the alter ego side. And just try to game plan your turn to utilize the two resources out of that hammer that he's giving you because of that situation. And then again, you used it twice the one turn, so then the very next turn, it's usually not that hard to get Asgard out because not only do you have Asgard, but on that first run through the deck, 4 Asgard pretty much always needs to be used to go find Asgard. As the title of the card is telling you that's the one you really want to be looking for.
I was gonna just bring up the fact that you touched upon the fact that Thor is unique in the fact that he can regularly have kind of 7 or 8 cards in hand quite easily, yeah. which is a ceiling that most characters just aren't going to get to. How did you find that influenced the play style and the build plan? Did you factor that in when building this deck, or was it something that you've kind of discovered synergy with after the fact? Or
no, I try to game plan around it because you will notice that there is quite a bit of 1-cost cards in here. I see there's 12 total cards that cost 1, and honestly, I would like to have gone even higher. And again, that's going to happen here in a little bit. So, because Stingers only costs 1, right? So get her in there. She's the only one that's a net loss if you use a Quinjet on her. So. So that's the only. Even if you use a Quinjet, this is another thing that you got to remember about that card. Even if you use a Quinjet to bring a 2-cost guy in, you didn't actually lose any resources. It's not the best use of a Quinjet, but it's not a loss. So if that's the best play that turn, if that's the cleanest turn, and you already have another Quinjet on the table that's generating counters, go ahead and bring the 2-cost guy in and save those 2 resources to play other stuff in your hand. Yeah, don't be overly eager to do it, but don't be afraid to do it either.
On the flip side of that, Thor, getting those extra cards off his Have at the ability and his thwarting ability, which is I can't think of the thwart card. I've lost the name
Defender of the Nine Realms.
Defender of the Nine Realms obviously dependent on a scenario's minion content. Were there any points in Rise of Red Skull where that led to specific difficulties? Do any of the 5 villains?
Yeah, that's so that's the 2 losses that I mentioned that I didn't really count, because what happened was I was about to play Absorbing Man, and I was working different things in, and I had Weapon Master there, and I go, that's a little too much. There's no minions in that deck. I mean, even 1 I'm okay with. I'm not going in with none. But I was like, you know what? Let me scratch this itch just for fun. And I went ahead and played it twice and lost both times. The first time was hilarious because I drew all the Defense of the Nine Realms like early, and then chucked them all obviously on the mulligan and everything, and it was pain. And go for it. And then the very first card is is Shadows of the Past, which put not only Loki, but that's part of. It's just why, even though Thor has a little bit stronger Shadows of the Past card that's a little bit more brutal than most, it does help him out because it puts 3 more minions into the rotation, right? You got to watch for them, and it's an argument to spec piercing, right? Because the Frost Giants have tough tokens, but I had chucked all the Defender of the Nine, so that obviously didn't go well, and I ended up losing. And then I tried it again, and then Shadows of the Past didn't pop up the next. So it's just a little too much. I was too much in the back foot. I thought I was going to get it the second time, but I said I kind of played those off the record, if you will. But yeah, as long as there's because the 2 modules that have minions in them in the campaign have 5 each. Hydra Patrol has 5. Hydra Assault has 5. So you're adding those 5 against whatever the that scenario has. So Taskmaster has 7. Red Skull has like 13 minions in there. Zola has, I want to say 10. Let's see, Crossbone, and this is like as written. So maybe my totals might have adjusted a little bit. But Crossbones is going to have 4, 9, 11, I believe. So yeah, they're all packing decent amounts of minions. It's really easy to use Defender of the Nine Realms. And if you're playing solo, we like to use this word a lot, but that's 3 thwart is pretty much nuking a side scheme. Most side schemes are gone. So it's pretty good. It's pretty good. I wouldn't be too afraid of it. In fact, that's Defender of the Nine Realms is more one of his problems when he's in multiplayer, because it becomes more of a liability at that stage because you can push through the deck a little faster. But on solo, it's I would say that's the one advantage he has solo, is that Defender of the Nine is not so bad because I play most games solo and never get an acceleration token.
Yeah, when I asked that question, I was pretty sure that you were going to tell me that Absorbing Man was going to be the biggest issue there. Because so Thor's one of those. He might be the one character that has more of a rough time with Absorbing Man than the others because of that.
Yeah, especially with Weapon Master in there, but that's why I played him off the record. I was like, whoa, let's
yeah, just it's like an extra.
Let's not do that. It's a little silly.
Just making it adding a bit of a difficulty mode somewhere between expert and heroic, I would imagine. Just playing Absorbing Man or Rhino with Weapon Master and just trying to do it with Leadership Thor.
Well, even Rhino has 4 minions in his deck. Absorbing Man has 0, so there's literally 0 in there. Without a module, Absorbing Man has nothing. It's kind of funny because the flavor on his first form, on his Villain 1 card, says something about him beating Thor. So it's like yeah, and in this game you are definitely an anti-Thor scenario. If you do not add the minions in, they don't exist. But that Thor's best at all the hardest scenarios. Zola has tons of minions. Ultron has tons of minions. Mutagenic Formula has tons of minions. All the scenarios where you need someone to really bash down minions, he shines. And because I was rolling random scenarios up, and I did get Mutagenic Formula with him twice. Guess what happens when he flips a bunch of minions on you? When you push him into his third form and you get you have to deal with 4 cards that turn, I think. He throws out 3 minions. I'm lightning striking all of them off the board immediately. Just blasting through. Just like nobody else can do that. Nobody else can do that. That's what I'm saying. He shines the brightest where everyone else just struggles and even fails. So, and this is solo. It's even more so on multiplayer. So, I definitely would say he's underrated at this stage. In particular, because he gets massive mileage out of Earth's Mightiest Heroes because he gets that 3 on his attack. So that's a huge boon to him. He's just going to get better and better and better. I think out of everyone too, he's probably in the top 3 of people that's going to benefit from the next 2 decks coming out. Because there's an aggression heal coming out for anyone who's curious in Ant-Man. You're going to be able to throw your hammer and smash someone's face and heal a crapload of life at the same time.
Yeah, and I think that's encouraging to hear for people who are big fans of Marvel, especially given Hulk's shortcomings. They want to see Thor become a real power player in the game, true to his nature within the comics. So that's really, really good to hear. Is there anything else you'd like to let us know about Thor before we kind of begin wrapping up the series as a whole?
I mean, in general, like I said, really utilize that hammer if you can. Try to get those 1-cost cards to where it's just really easy to pitch it for a resource, flip, to this on 2 different cards. And that's the big one. Don't be afraid to swing down. I'm trying to think of just really any scenario where you wouldn't be able to pull that off because you just thwarted right with Defender 9 Realms more than likely if you hammer through a guy. So it's just you take full advantage of that scenario, and I think you should be fine.
Yeah, that's a very good tip. I think it's almost second nature to kind of want to attach the hammer to Thor immediately, but you have, through his abilities, got the ability to use it more effectively in a lot of circumstances. Yeah, we're basically at the end of the neglected list. We've been talking for about a grand total of 5 hours at this point. And by my count, you've taken care of 64 different villains encompassing 13 alternate versions of the Rise of Red Skull characters. Forgetting the we'll pretend that the Red Skull loss to Hulk didn't happen. So getting a grasp on it as a whole, were there any of the hero and aspect combinations on the list that you found particularly enjoyable to play or particularly not enjoyable to play?
So I was surprised with Spider-Woman, Leadership, Justice. On the surface, it kind of looked like a poor man's aggression leadership, but I was pleasantly surprised. Like I said, I didn't try that cheese strategy. That's one I'd say go ahead and just try with Coulson and rapid response, see if it works out. I also don't have enough patience. So some of these guys that can play these 30-turn grind games that somehow has some kind of cycle that's hard to break, but all I'm doing is 2 damage every turn. Like I don't have enough patience for that kind of stuff. So so more power to them if they can play these safer grinder games. I'd rather lose once and then play a faster game and then win and win 90-80% than win 95% with those strategies. So it's it's a play style decision. But I was impressed that there is some legitimate options there, outside the cheese and Thor leadership. I think was always on the horizon. I think with Inspiring Presence, it's one of those cards where it's like I really want to use this with Thor, And then, of course, Goliath gives you the opportunity to go nuts, and with Earth's Mightiest Heroes being in there at the same time, so he didn't quite get to go off as much as I had with Black Widow, but she's a little bit more able to make those combos work. But he's still did the job. As far as maybe didn't enjoy so much all together, maybe Black Panther Justice. It just felt like he should have been playing something else instead, oddly. But
yeah, it's as I think I mentioned when we were discussing it, it doesn't do anything unusual or unexpected or exciting. It really is just putting in the basic good stuff in there. And I think my initial deck list that I posted alongside the description of part one really was just that. It was basically just Black Panther and Justice good stuff, really. So I totally understand where you're coming from there.
Yeah, and like I said, I'm not even sure if that was the list I used because I was just kind of lost my notes and I panicked put it together, and I've got it in front of me here, the actual one I did use. So I'm looking it over and just thinking like, man, but it just yeah, it just it just maybe just felt bland. So but the Black Panther himself is kind of fun, but you just really kind of want to go with those aggression builds or those leadership builds, those protection builds. Like those are all very, very intriguing, fun builds with Black Panther. So I think it's more like I missed those than I was really dissatisfied with Justice. But everybody else was okay. Hulk, might be the other one, but that's a general feeling of he needs those basic cards to come out that are due early next year. And then I think that's the cards he needs for every aspect. He's gonna that's your basic deck you were talking about. It's Hulk. He's the one. He's the guy who wants to use it. And you could probably go all basic, but of course you're just gonna get that little bit extra advantage if you just take advantage of the aspect pairing that you have and put 4, 5, 6 aspect cards in there with it. But yeah, he's going to be a heavy user of the basic cards.
Yeah, forget the strongest. Hulk is the most basic there is his new cash, right? And I'm here for it. I think that'll be cool. So I'll be looking to explore that the moment that comes out as well. Yeah, I mean, on the whole, was there any kind of final thoughts you wanted to impart on our viewers regarding trying to tackle the Rise of Red Skull campaign with these kind of off-meta aspects, hero combinations?
I mean, one thing that I noticed, I did get some extra losses against Absorbing Man, and at first I was like, man, what am I doing? I actually caught on to what was going on. I think it was more subconscious. I was trying to rush it through Absorbing Man, but I actually stick by that decision. I'd rather lose the match and try to keep those counters down on Red Skull than pridefully win a 15-round match with Absorbing Man and then immediately push to Red Skull's second scheme cycle, right? And risk losing that one. So that's kind of what was going on when I picked up on it, because the last few guys I wasn't rushing it as much, but luckily they were all the heavy hitters with Spider-Man Aggression, Thor Leadership, and Spider-Woman Justice Leadership, but those had more counters on it than almost any other runs. But that, it's that kind of pre-planning, just being willing to lose to Absorbing Man. And even though I was like that is cheese, and but it's like, hey, that's the game that we're playing with too. So Taskmaster, you can probably stick around for one run through that deck. Just keep Thwart under control, stick around and get those allies. That's how you beat those last two scenarios. One try, in and out. If you can get 2, 3, all 4 of those zero cost allies on Taskmaster, doesn't matter what aspect you're playing, doesn't matter which hero you're playing, you're going to be able to get through it. Just dropping guys in for 0 that have 2 average on their stats with 3 hit points is it's just going to clean that up. So yeah, take advantage of the format, and also pick Thwart's probably your biggest target, but also just look at covering up a weakness on some of the other guys. So it's whether it's recovery, to try to get those extra hit points or whatever it is. Look to cover up a weakness than necessarily just have tons of attack, or if you already have lots of thwart, like I said with Iron Man, that's when I went with the attack, that sort of thing. So It's best to be better, well-rounded in a solo capacity than overly specialized.
Yeah, I really like your point regarding absorbing man there. The fact that because you're incentivized for beating him quickly, it does lead to the potential to make poor play decisions and misread the situation, misread the game situation, and end up basically losing or taking a loss because you are focused on avoiding those negative consequences of it when the game situation would normally dictate another course of action, usually, if that makes sense. I think
Yeah, well,
that
and
makes it more
I
interesting than
was
Rhino, at
using those
least.
other modules in there too. So it was like a lot of those losses were not coming against Hydra Patrol. That's the weakest combo for him. Weapon Master and Hydra Assault both push the difficulty up on that scenario because they both just give him extra attack opportunities. So yeah, I mean, I wouldn't blame you if you felt that was cheesy because I avoid cheese a lot of times. But
It's just meant from a
just knowing
design
what the end
space that's
goal is.
interesting.
Yeah, just knowing what that end goal is and keeping that in mind to take some risks on early so that it pays off in the end.
Yeah, and you can look forward to that next episode on Across the 616, the draft league, where we tackle the World Series of Absorbing Man with all the different modules. That'll I'm kidding, but I'm sure I'll run out of ideas one day, and that'll become a thing, and we'll just be ranking Absorbing Man with each encounter. Sorry, in each modular set, the top 10 modular sets for Absorbing Man runs.
Yeah, well, I could probably tell you a couple of the harder ones because I was playing a lot with those. But that's the fun thing too is mixing those up because some of those combos do really change scenarios. Sometimes they're easier on one and they're a lot harder on another. Obviously, Power Drain sees a lot more mileage on someone like Claw than it does on someone like even Ultron, right? Because it combos with all the deck milling stuff that's already going on, and you just fly through it so fast. Next thing you know, you've got 3 acceleration tokens, and you're like, "Whoa, this is getting out of hand." It's fun to switch them around.
It's great that realistically, I think it's 240 odd cards in the Rise of Red Skull, but you've suddenly got it's added just so much in terms of because of the campaign aspects, but there's just so much discussion about it. It's added infinite wealth to the health of the game, especially when talking about it or analyzing it. Just then being able to go kind of how do all the modular sets and previous stuff like change up the experience, how they affect the campaign format as well. And it's really cool that going forward we're going to see like what's the opposite of diminishing returns? We're going to see increased returns with each new thing that gets added.
Exponential gains.
Yeah, exponential gains. There you go. Because we obviously, as I said, we're talking for almost 5 hours, and we can definitely, you could definitely talk another, 3 days about the different nuances of what the Rise of Red Skull campaign has brought to the game.
Well, just look at it this way. At least in American money, so depending on what currency you're using, this may not be the same case, but you're actually getting more cards per dollar after you subtract out the campaign cards. So I'm not even including those. You get more cards for your money from Rise of Red Skull than you did from the base game. So it's actually the best buy for the game. Of course, you got the components in the base game, so you still need it on the core set. But yeah, it was actually a really good quantity of cards for what you were paying. So I'm happy with it. It's got a few shortcomings, but they're forgivable, and it's as long as their editing team and stuff like just clean stuff up in the future. And if any of the beta testers are listening out there, I think that's part of your guys' job too, is to look at some of those misprints and clean them up. Say, hey, this doesn't read right, So that's why they send that stuff out to people. But yeah, the mileage is great on it. So Very happy with the product.
We need to be real though. You're getting the components in the base game, but you're probably immediately spending $40 or $50 to switch them out for something fancy from Etsy anyway. So the value
I
of
hear a lot
that
of
is
people do. I
questionable.
honestly still use I still use those base game tokens, but that's
Me
just me.
too. Me too.
I
But
don't know. A lot of people have. You're right. You see, like the Etsy shop is full of them, just like tons of different options. Just like wow, and even like stuff that doesn't even exist, like 4 tokens for Spider Woman to keep track of which aspect you used
I
that
love
turn
that. I want
already.
those. I want those.
Uh,
I'm keen for that.
and yeah, and I kind of like the stun and tough token status, status cards, but some people change those out too, and they don't like them. They like something else, but it's to each their own.
Shout out to the fine folks from the Bling Your Game channel in the Marvel Champions Discord. Those guys, some of them big high rollers and have got a lot of money, and I'm very jealous of their setups.
Hey, I honestly, when I was doing Magic, that's how I acquired some of the collection I did. I did care that the cards like were in good condition, but and that they had a good art picture on it. But I traded some high value cards out to get like several like not only a play set of that same card, right? Of that was some other printing of it, but a play set of 2 other different cards, so it was that were also hard to find. So it's funny, but that's important to some people, is to get all the nice shiny stuff and all the promos and stuff. And if that's you, do you, man.
Just before we go, is there anything you want us to plug for the viewers? I know we did that initially, but that was 5 hours ago. So is there any projects you've got coming up, any articles, any podcasts, anything you want to plug? Anywhere you'd like people to hit you up and let you know what a great job you've done on this series?
Well, I'll probably drop that. I'll probably go to Board Game Geek and do a module guide, of souping up the different scenarios of which ones synergize with it, which ones will make it harder. Because heroic is just a little either out of reach or just isn't your style. I can play heroic. I have played heroic, with some other good players out there, but it's just I'm one of those guys. It's just not my style. I'd like to search for other means. So yeah, I'll have that coming out and as a resource for everybody. Just some great stuff coming out later this year. Hopefully, they just get those rules things cleaned up. And I really appreciate you having me on. And hopefully, we can get together and do something else. Do some other project, maybe something for Galaxy's Most Wanted or something when that comes out.
Book it in. Definitely book it in. And yeah, you've been obviously a wonderful guest, and 5 hours is a lot of time to give up. So thank you very much for that. And I will be sure to, for anyone listening in the future, I'll be sure to update the description of this episode and previous episodes with your guide to the how the modular sets improve or decrease the difficulty regarding the relevant Red Skull villains.
Fantastic.
And with that, we bring our 4-part Mega Primer on the Rise of Red Skull campaign and each hero's least used aspect to a close. I'd like to once again thank special guest Earth Dragon for giving up a lot of his time to come on the show and speak to us about this massive personal project. And also another thank you to all of you wonderful listeners. I hope you had a lot of success trying to tackle the Rise of Red Skull campaign with some or all of the decks we've spoken about across the 4 parts, and look forward to a brand new episode and a brand new topic in the coming weeks. Thanks very much. Bye.